Welcome everyone. My name is Joy Owango. I'm the Executive Director of the Training Center in Communication, which is a research capacity organization that supports researchers, research institutes and governments on how they can improve their research visibility and increase their output through scholarly and science communication. And we are here together with our partner, IDA Africa, which is a mentorship program and uses social media tools in bringing together and mentoring researchers, namely the social media tools is namely WhatsApp. And because of that interactive platform, IDA Africa has successfully managed to bring together over 800 researchers. And together with IDA Africa, we have managed to pool our resources together to support both the mentees in our research groups, making it over 900 researchers from 2 continents, so North America and Africa, and we are supporting researchers in their research life cycle. So the bulk of our researchers are postgraduates, and they're already publishing, they're going through the publishing process, and of course, having a talk from PLOS, which was the very first journal globally to adopt an open access policy, is imperative, especially when it comes to the researchers understanding the open access process and what opportunities are available for researchers in the global south. There are quite a number of opportunities that are available for researchers in the global south, and I'm excited that Georgie, the associate publisher, is going to take us through what our mentees can benefit from in this from this academic publisher. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Aurelia Munene, the founder of IDA Africa.
Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you all again. Just to invite you again to this amazing mentorship session and opportunities for you to plug into more spaces that can grow your journey as a researcher. So I look forward to Georgie's presentation and to engagement with you as always. Most welcome. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you so much, Aurelia. Now, this talk is going to be 45 minutes. And feel free to ask any question, put it in the chat. We are more than happy to support you. Remember, what we are focusing on is open access and also smart journal selection strategy, because that is what Georgie is involved in. So feel free to ask as many questions as possible and what opportunities you feel are available or should be provided for researchers in the global south. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Georgie Field. She's the associate publisher for 6 journals in the PLOS portfolio, namely PLOS Medicine, PLOS Biology, PLOS Computational Biology, PLOS Neglected Tropical Diseases, PLOS Genetics, and PLOS Pathogens. She works with a team of managing editors to develop the journals to ensure that they champion the communities that they serve. Alongside this, she works on PLOS alternative business models to enable equitable access to publishing. And to be honest with you, I'm quite excited to hear about these new equitable access to publishing that are available that will be able to support researchers in the global south. So over to you, Georgia, and I really thank you for making time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Joy. Let me just share my screen. Okay, I'm hoping you can all see a big slide.
Yes, we can. Okay,
perfect. So thank you so much for that introduction. I am very excited to speak to you this afternoon/evening. My email address and my Twitter handle are at the bottom of the slide. So after this session, please feel free to email me, tweet me, however you want to get in touch if you have further thoughts or questions. And please do put them in the chat during the talk, and I will do my best to answer anything that you would like to ask a question about. And as Joy said, I will walk you through sort of open access at PLOS and opportunities for you as early career researchers as well. So today we'll talk a little bit about PLOS's history, our mission, and what open access is and how that affects you as a researcher. I'll go through our portfolio, so all 12 of our journals and the different subject areas they all publish under. A little bit about what you can expect as an author. So we have multiple policies around open science, so how those affect you and how you need to be preparing yourself and your research to publish with us. And then, as Joy said, we have lots of alternative business models and funding opportunities for our researchers. And so I'll talk through options for researchers in middle and low income countries in particular. So let's dive straight in. What is open access? So in a traditional publishing house, you would see a fee to read a paper, and that's usually a subscription that your institution would pay. So as an author, you don't see any fee when you submit a paper to that publisher for publication, but you will see those prompts for payment when you try and read a paper, especially if you're not logged into your institution's VPN. So you might also have heard of Research for Life, and they help to provide free access to subscription content for institutions in middle and low income countries. And just remember the name Research for Life, because we'll come back to that a bit later in the talk. So open access really flips that on its head. And we believe that it returns us to the values of science, which are to share findings freely and broadly. Open access started to be a major topic of conversation in sort of the early 2000s. And in the last 20 years, we've come a really long way towards open access, but the key benefits remain the same. Firstly, is that authors retain copyright of their work. This is super important to you as a researcher. Usually you submit a paper to a publisher and they take rights to your work at that point. And if you want to reuse content from that paper, such as reusing a figure that you've created, you need to request permission from that publisher to use that image. Open access is not like that. We publish all of our papers under Creative Commons license, and that means that all of the content in that paper remains under your ownership as the author. The research is not only free to read for anybody, it's all available on the web in our case, but it's also free to download, to share, and to reuse. Open access facilitates wider dissemination of the research, so that means it can be more visible. And there are multiple studies showing that open access publications have a download and a citation advantage. So we really remove barriers through this process, not just for the academic community, but more broadly. So policymakers, students, and even the general public have access to the work, and it enables more impact for researchers' work and the ability for more discoveries to be built upon. So publishing open access for you as a researcher means it's going to be more widely shared and hopefully more widely cited as well. So what was PLOS's role in the open access movement? We played a really pivotal role. We helped to bring open access into the mainstream and really create a shift in the publishing industry. We started with 3 scientists, Harold Varmus, Patrick Brown, and Mike Eisen, who in 2000 circulated an open letter that would eventually be signed by 34,000 scientists from 180 countries and spark the foundation for PLOS. And these scientists were really calling for research funded by public funds, such as local research councils, to then be available to read by the policymakers and funders. So we were founded to show that open access was both feasible but also valuable. And we recognised that most existing journals really weren't going to change their business practices to open access. And so in 2003, we launched our first fully open access journal in order to empower researchers to make science immediately and publicly available online with no restrictions. And our model of article processing charges, whereby an author pays for publication, was revolutionary at the time, and it would soon become the primary mechanism for open access publication. And open access has worked. It is now a core part of scientific publishing. All major publishers offer open access options. We're no longer the only player in the market. And it's acknowledged more broadly that this is a future that we should all be aiming towards. So open access is imperative to what we do, but at the center of everything is research and our researchers. And we want to amplify the voices of experts. So as a fully open access publisher, we've shown that open can mean high quality venues for publication. They can have rigorous standards. We can have high levels of author service. And we continue to advocate for fair and open research evaluation. And we do all of this so that we can provide the world with access to science that they can trust. And really, in the current climate of misinformation, that is becoming more and more important every single day. So I wanted to put a slide up with our mission. I think all of that background leads really nicely to it. We're a non-profit publisher empowering researchers to accelerate progress in science and medicine by leading a transformation in research communication. And that aspect of transformation is really fundamental to our ethos, and it's something that we're constantly working on. We're not sort of there and done, and that's the end, and scholarly publishing is exactly how we want it to be. We're still very much in the process of transforming. And so that leads us nicely onto our journals, because our journals are fundamental to our mission. They are the vehicles by which, we communicate with our communities and the way that we really push open science and open access forwards. We have 12 journals in total. Our most recent ones were launched this year. We've launched 5 new journals, and each one of them is linked to our mission in a slightly different way. So this is what they all look like if you put them one next to each other. On the left, we have our highly selective journals. These are the ones that you'll see with the highest impact factors if we were going to talk about impact factors as a measure of quality, but these are highly selective. We have biology, medicine, and a brand new one launched hopefully next year, which is sustainability and transformation. Then the green column, these are field-specific selective journals. They focus on communities of researchers in a really well-defined topic area, and I will go through all of these for you and explain the different bits of their scopes. The blue titles are 3 of our new journals. They're all topic-focused and they're curated, which means they showcase sound science with real-world relevance. On the right, then, we've got PLOS 1, and that's probably the journal that most of you are most familiar with. This journal publishes methodologically rigorous research across all scientific disciplines. So super broad scope, multidisciplinary, and focusing on sound science. The 5 new journals all follow PLOS's ethos and mission, and in alignment with the proposed UNESCO recommendations on open science, they all ensure diversity and equity of representation at all levels. So that includes our editors, our editorial boards, our reviewers, our authors, and we'll actively seek out research from underrepresented communities. We've made that commitment. The journals play a part in broader efforts to create a more equitable system of knowledge sharing, accelerating and increasing the benefits of scientific endeavour for global society as a whole. So we have pretty lofty goals for these journals. All of the new journals in particular focus on some of the world's most globally relevant issues to which locally relevant research can and must become more visible. This approach, we hope, will directly challenge the pretty unfortunate norm that most global forums remain dominated by research from Western Europe and North America. So I'll talk you through each of the journals and their scopes. So our first journal, PLOS Biology, which was launched back in 2003, focuses on significant advances across sort of the broad spectrum of biology and the life sciences. It promotes reproducibility, transparency, rigor, and trust in science. It also aims to promote a sort of kinder research culture and one that reflects the discovery process. So they actively try and counter publication bias through selectivity criteria that focus on the research question and the importance of the question, and less so on the the exact finding and a positive result. And they also have several article types that give authors choice. So you'll see in the top right here, they publish sort of research articles, short reports, meta research, and have pre-registration options as well. Biology is part of our community action business model, and that aims to shield our authors from rising costs of publishing open access and selective journals. And we'll talk a bit more about community action later on when we talk about funding options, but just keep in your mind that biology is one of the journals that falls under that model. Lastly, our editor-in-chief for this journal is employed in-house by PLOS, and her name is Nonia Pariente. So our next journal is PLOS Medicine, similar to biology, highly selective, very broad scope, but this time publishing across all areas of medicine, public health, clinical medicine, and they aim really to curate high quality medical research and ensure that those working in the healthcare sector can access and build upon that research. It is also under our community action publishing model. And we have another in-house editor-in-chief. Her name is Raffaella Bosergi. And I've put the web addresses for all of the journals at the bottom here, but they all follow the same pattern. They're all plos.org/PLOS journal name. So you can find all of them nice and easily. Next up, this is one of our new titles, Sustainability and Transformation. And this is the last of the 3 sort of highly selective titles. It is currently open for submissions, and our first issue, we're hoping, will be published sort of midway through 2022. So we'll see how that goes in terms of how many papers are being submitted. The aim of sustainability and transformation is to bring together researchers from all different disciplines and geographies to drive progress towards a more sustainable future. The EIC, the editor-in-chief for this journal, is external to PLOS. His name is Lian Pin Ko from the National University of Singapore. Please do check this one out because it's brand new and we're very excited to have a sort of highly selective, environmentally focused journal as well. Okay, on to our topic-specific sort of community-driven titles. The first one is PLOS Computational Biology. And this journal connects computational methods with all different aspects of biology to give us insights into living systems, and that's systems at all scales from nano to macro. And they publish across multiple different areas from molecular science, neuroscience, physiology, ecology, population biology, and they're looking for works of exceptional significance, things that are really going to push forward the field. This particular journal and the community that publishes in it are very excited by open science. And so alongside PLOS's standard data policy, which I'll talk about a bit later, this journal also strongly encourages the sharing of code and methods alongside the data. So if you're thinking about this journal, you need to have in your head, if I've made code, I've generated code, I'm going to need to make that available with my paper as well.
Okay.
We have got 2 editors-in-chief on this journal. We have Phelim Gabin from Johns Hopkins University and Jason Papin from the University of Virginia. Our next journal, it's another new journal. This is PLOS Digital Health. Again, we're open for submissions. We're pending the launch of our first issue. Digital Health publishes research that uses digital tools and technologies to advance healthcare and healthcare outcomes. So we're bringing together clinicians, engineers, medical researchers, social scientists, and those in industry. We have got an external editor-in-chief again for this journal. He's called Leo Antonicelli from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And again, the first issue we're hoping will be published midway through 2022. Next up is PLOS Genetics. Genetics is a broad spectrum genetics journal. So we publish work from all different aspects of genetics, from humans to model organisms such as mice and flies, through to plants and bacteria. And we're looking for any study with broad interest here to the genetics community. We've got 2 editors-in-chief again, Gregory Bosch from Hudson Alpha and Stanford University, and Gregory Copenhagen at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Another topic-specific journal, this is one of my favorites, is PLOS Neglected Tropical Diseases. This journal really aims to highlight those diseases which are deemed to be sort of under-resourced and forgotten. I think the UN defines about 17 different diseases to fall under this header. And this journal aims to bring together a geographically diverse group of editors and authors, and really to make a difference to the populations that are suffering from these diseases. We've got 2 editors-in-chief here, Shadon Kamhawi at the National Institutes of Health and Paul Brindley at George Washington University. And our final of the topic-specific journals, this is PLOS Pathogens. They're focusing on the biology of pathogens and also the pathogen-host interactions. They're interested in research that highlights our understanding of how pathogens interact with their host organisms in particular. PLOS Pathogens has an interesting partnership that launched recently with the Dryad Data Repository. And so as an author, if you're interested in submitting to pathogens, you have an option of depositing your data with Dryad, and they're a secure repository. Usually they would be charging for their service, but through this agreement with PLOS, authors are able to deposit their data through Dryad with no charge. We've got 2 editors-in-chief again for this journal, Kasturi Halder at the University of Notre Dame and Michael Malin, who is at King's College London. Okay, we're on to our 3 new journals. You'll notice a common theme through all of these journals. They are all multidisciplinary, bringing researchers together, and they're all in areas that have a sort of direct impact on populations. So the first is PLOS Climate, and they're seeking to bring together researchers and policymakers and governments and international organizations and industry, so everybody who works in climate research, to tackle issues around climate change. They publish across the breadth of climate research, and that includes policy papers, but also papers on the direct human impacts of climate. They have a very globally distributed editorial board, and they're really interested in highlighting issues of regional relevance, so regional climate models and regional impacts as well. They've been very proactively connecting with their early career researcher network. They want to make sure that this journal is really representing early career researchers. And they've got a very lively blog called Latitude. So check it out if you're interested in climate research. We've got just the one editor-in-chief here, Emma Archer from the University of Pretoria. And this journal is open for submissions. And again, we're hoping our first issue will come out mid next year. PLOS Global Public Health. We launched 5 journals in spring of this year, and Global Public Health was the first one to be officially published. We published an issue in October, so please check out the first issue. We had some very interesting opinion pieces on vaccines that I found particularly interesting. The mission of this journal is really to address those deeply entrenched inequities in global health, and to make sure that impactful research is visible and accessible to health professionals, policymakers, and local communities. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is very key to what they do. They have made a public commitment to avoid elitism and not to focus on novelty or impact factors, but rather on the rigor of the research and the contribution of the research to academic knowledge. They've got about 21 different sections covering all different areas across global public health, including nursing, mental health, trauma, policy, racism in healthcare, and global health security. We have got 2 editors-in-chief for this one as well, Catherine Kayobatungi from the Consortium of Advanced Research Training in Africa, and Maduka Pai at McGill. So our final of our new titles, PLOS Water. Again, we're open for submissions and we're pending a first issue sometime next year. Water publishes research in water sanitation and hygiene, sustainable consumption, management, supply issues. And again, they're aiming to bring together researchers and policymakers to tackle issues around water as a vital human resource. We've got just the two editors-in-chief here, Jenna Davis at Stanford University and Pierre Horwitz at Edith Cowan University. Oh, whistle-stop tour. There's just one journal to go, which is PLOS One. This was the first multidisciplinary open access mega journal. It is one of the largest open access journals in the world. And at the time of launch, its mission was unique, and that was to publish all rigorous science, regardless of novelty or perceived impact. So we believe in the top here that all rigorous science needs to be published and discoverable, widely disseminated and freely accessible to all. And that was really the founding purpose of PLOS One. We publish about 17,000 articles per year, give or take. And we have a very inclusive scope and selection criteria. We publish more than 200 different subjects. And within PLOS, we have 4 key subject teams, and they are responsible for sort of driving strategy and decision making in each of those subjects. We're currently supported by an editorial board of 9,000 researchers, and that board is expanding all the time. We're supported in-house by a team of staff who help with recruitment and help to support the editors that really make this journal what it is. So PLOS One, as I said, sound science, rigorous methodology, but publishing across all different areas of science. So that is all of our journals. And I wanted to touch a little bit on open science because you'll have heard me mention open science a few times. So I wanted to tell you a bit about what that means for you as an author and what you can expect if you were going to submit to one of the PLOS journals. So for PLOS, open access was really the first part of our journey, and we wanted to continue that transformation of science communication. Open science is really the logical next step. So open science is the means or the method rather than the goal. It is a means to publish more reliable, reusable, and trustworthy research. So you can break open science down into 3 different segments: the open publication process, open research practices, and tools to counter publication bias. And at PLOS, we require some of these things from you as an author, and we recommend others. And so I'll run you through what that looks like and then how you can think about preparing if you were going to submit a paper to us. So in the publication process, you are required to provide an ORCID ID for the corresponding author. These are super easy to get hold of. There's no charge for them. If you just look up ORCID ID, it will give you a unique identifier, which means if there are multiple researchers with the same name in your field or across other fields, people can identify you directly by that unique identifier. We also require you to complete the credit taxonomy to indicate the contributions of each author. We think this is really fundamental because the 5th, 6th, 7th author on your paper who had an important contribution to the methodology will be listed out in the bottom of the paper to say that's what this author did for this paper. And that's really important for you as an early career researcher. When you're doing a lot of the experimental work, you want to have your work, you want to get credit for your work. So we believe that credit is a very important part of that taxonomy. Most of our journals will give you the option to post a preprint to bioRxiv and coming soon to medRxiv as well at submission. We actively encourage the submission of papers that have previously been posted as a preprint. You'll see a few publishers are sort of against it if you've published it as a preprint before. We're very encouraging, please do post preprints before or during the submission process. As an author, you can choose to have your peer reviews published alongside your paper, and I've got a slide on open peer review for you in a sec. We encourage open research practices by mandating the sharing of the data underlying the study. And we also encourage you to share your code. We provide support for you to share protocols and lab methods. And we also help you in providing sort of checklists, things like the ARRIVE guidelines and things like that, reporting checklists to help you with your research. We help to counter publication bias by publishing registered reports, pre-registration of clinical trials. We have several journals with inclusive publication criteria, and they emphasize the research question rather than the result. So what can you do as a researcher to help with your open science journey? When you're preparing to do your research, check your funder and journal policies before you start. You don't want to get caught out finding that actually you needed to provide your data, but you're not prepared to do that and you don't have a structure in place. So check those first. Consider management and storage. So things like a data management plan. How are you going to store your data? How are you going to collect it? And how are you going to make sure you can get back to it when you want to reproduce something? Identify repositories for you to store your data and your code, or a preprint server that you want to post to, and think about how you need to be structuring your data as you collect it in order to deposit it. Understand the community expectations and standards. You want to uphold those standards as you're doing your research. Make sure you familiarize yourself with any tools that are available to you to help. And then share your protocols or reuse others as you go. And there's a nice link to a paper here that you can have a look at. When you're preparing to publish, as I said, share a preprint. We're very supportive. There are lots of different preprint servers available, and we're supportive of all of them. I saw a question popped up about Africa Archive. You can't send a preprint directly from Africa Archive to PLOS, but you can, in the submission form, it will say, have you posted a preprint before? You can say yes, and you can provide the DOI to it there, and that kind of closes the loop as well. But we don't have that sort of linking process with Africa Archive that we have with bioRxiv and medRxiv. Make your data and code available to the editors and reviewers. A lot of authors think about doing this later in the process before it's published, but it can only help in the assessment of your paper if you really open up the process to the editors and reviewers. Make sure that you accurately describe the availability of your data and your code and any protocols that you've used, and make sure you provide links with them where possible. Cite all the evidence you use. That sounds really obvious, but make sure you're citing papers and data and code that you've used along the way. Prepare to share with researchers who are wishing to build on your results. That's sort of part of the joy of open access, is that everything is freely available for reproduction. And publish your results regardless of the outcome. Positive results are great, but null results are also really valuable to science. So I have a slide for you on published peer review. This is an option that we've been offering for a couple of years now. And across our journals, about 40% of our authors on average will opt in to publishing their peer reviews. What happens is that along this normal life cycle of a paper, you submit it and it goes through checks and it goes to peer review if it's deemed worthy of being peer reviewed. At that point, the reviewers are asked whether they would like to sign their review. They're not asked whether they'd like to publish it because it's not their choice, it's the author's choice, but they're asked whether they'd like to sign their name. If, as a reviewer, and if you have a review for PLOS, and you think, I would not want my review to be published, that's absolutely fine, but you have to decline to review for us because we give the author the option of publishing them. If you don't want it published, you cannot review for us, but you can remain anonymous. The paper then continues through peer review, and at the point where you've received all your peer reviews back as an author, you can decide whether you'd like to have your peer reviews published. We let you do that so you can read all the reviews first, and you can make that decision as to whether you want them to be public. You're always welcome to say no. If you say yes, they will be published alongside your research article, and the names of the reviewers that chose to sign their name will also be published alongside that. And if they chose to remain anonymous, then you just get the reviews without their names. There's a big variation in the opt-in rate. For published peer review, as I said, it's varying from about 37% up to 66%. So before we talk about funding, I wanted to sort of bring us back to our mission and open access and our ethos, really, as we think about funding. So research is and should be global, and participation is as important as access. And we really do need to move away from entrenched inequalities, the dominance of North America and Europe. And PLOS has from the outset been focused on designing broad-scale change, and we've been clear about the limit and barriers of article processing charges, and we've begun to pilot some alternatives. So you as an author, you have two main options for funding your publication with PLOS. You can pay an APC, or you can be funded through your institution. So if you pay an APC, you can have support through PLOS's Global Participation Initiative and through fee assistance. And both these things are waivers. We contribute about $2 million in waivers every year for authors who cannot afford article processing charges or APCs. And that amount is increasing every single year. We endeavour to fund anybody who needs funding. So authors whose research is funded 50% or more by an institution or organisation from an eligible low and middle income country, you are automatically eligible for assistance. So generally, if your research funder is based in a Group A Research for Life country, PLOS will cover the entire publication fee for you, and there'll be no charge. If your funder is part of a Group B country, we'll cover all but part of it, and there's a remaining fee of $500. So that's under our Global Participation Initiative. If your fee is not fully covered by GPI, so you've either got to pay a full APC or that $500, you can apply for additional fee assistance with us. And that's applied for at submission of the article, and you have to demonstrate that you're in need of funds. So when you submit your paper, it will ask you, would you like to apply for fee assistance? You would say yes, and it will give you guidance there on what documentation you would need to provide. You must apply for that at submission. I'm going to say that a few times. There are, the occasional time where someone forgets or someone's circumstances change, and we do our best, but we do ask that people do apply at submission if they know they're going to need funds. Your second option is is to go through your institution, and your institution has membership. And I will go through all the institutional options in a second. There is free membership available for Research for Life country institutes to the majority of our business models. So my tip to everybody here is to make sure you go on the Research for Life website and check which group your institute sits under, because you are likely eligible for free membership and therefore free publication with us. For other institutions, the fees are based on historic spend and waiver rates. So if your institution historically gets a lot of waivers from PLOS, your fees will continue to be lower due to that. So you'll get heavily discounted. So my takeaway for everybody is please check your Research for Life status, and there will be support available for you. You just need to apply for it. We're aware the process is a little bit complicated, and we do have plans to make it easier for you in the future. So sort of stay tuned on that. These are the APCs for all of the journals. You can find out more about all of our fees on our fees page. Bear in mind, these are full fees with no additional support, and it's very likely that you will be able to be covered under either a waiver or through institutional membership. So these are just our full price APCs. I wanted to put this in here because I sometimes think it's important for us to talk about the pitfalls of APCs and why they are a challenge. Fundamentally, they are inequitable. Authors, and particularly early career researchers who don't have access to huge pots of money, Authors can't afford these fees, and they put you in a difficult position where you're having to choose between publishing in the journal that's right for your work and paying a fee. They're inequitable because research-heavy institutions tend to, carry the burden of the cost. Waivers are not a long-term solution for PLOS. We would like to find better ways of funding our authors. And I think fundamentally they undermine our mission, because a paywall is still a paywall, whether it is one to read or to publish. So our current models, as I said, we have APC-based authors pay for papers. Waivers are available to you. And there is also this option for institutions to pay monthly. We then have institutional deals. There's 3 different deals. Flat fees for 6 of our titles for 1, genetics, pathogens, computational biology, neglected tropical diseases, and digital health. We have community action publishing for medicine, biology, and sustainability and transformation. And we have global equity for global public health, climate, and water. And you're probably thinking, why? So many different models, but they are all designed slightly differently to allow institutions options for how they want to engage with us, and to hopefully provide enough variation that authors can find a way to have their publications funded. So what this means for institutions, under community action publishing for medicine, biology, and sustainability and transformation, and if you remember that table at the beginning, those are our highly selective titles. Institutes purchase membership for unlimited publications. So all of their authors are covered for publications if they make it through the publication process. If your institution is not a member, you would have to pay an APC as an author, and all of those waiver options that I just mentioned are available to you. Any institution in a Research for Life country in either of the groups have free membership. You would not pay a fee to publish in these journals, so please do check the status of your institute. Global equity are 3 new titles: climate, water, and GPH. Also, unlimited publication for institutes that pay a fee. They pay a single annual fee. Again, there's an APC if your institute is not a member. The APC is $2,100, and all those waiver options are still available to you. And again, all institutes in Research for Life countries have free membership, so check your membership status. And finally, flat fees, which cover the remaining 6 titles. They again provide unlimited publication for an institution. They pay an annual fee. There is no pay an APC if you're not a member. You would just go through the standard process of publishing with us if your institution doesn't have a flat fee. Unlike the other deals, Research for Life countries don't have free membership, but their fees are based on previous publication volumes and waiver rates. So again, if you're receiving a high number of waivers already, that would be factored into the price, and it would be heavily discounted for your institution. So if you're interested in lobbying your institution to sign up for any of these models, please let me know. I can put you in the right place with the right people. But my take home here is that there is support available to you. Please check our fees page. Please check the Research for Life pages, because your institute is likely already covered in some kind of mechanism. And if you want to lobby your institute to purchase membership, please do get in touch. I think I have one last slide, which I wanted to leave you with sort of the last few bits of our ethos and some sort of nice messages, which is sort of PLOS is really here to break boundaries. We want to advance research faster. We want it to be shared more broadly, and we want to help you increase collaboration. We want to empower you as a researcher to transform science by making it inclusive, giving you choice, giving you credit for the work that you do, and making sure that all the publication is transparent. We want to redefine quality. We want to assess and communicate the full arc of research, and to do that fairly and accurately by caring about things like the research question. And we want to really push forwards open science, because we want to build a trusted foundation for knowledge from which we can all advance. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. My email and my Twitter handle are there, and I would like to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Georgia,
Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia, for your insights. And thank you so much for your insights on the open access opportunities for researchers in the Global South. Everyone, as I'd said in the beginning, PLOS was the very first journal globally to adopt an open access model. And the beauty about that is that they are constantly changing their models to accommodate researchers from the Global South, being very cognizant that also the existing publishing models can be a bit prohibitive for researchers. And that is why she was talking, that is why Georgie was talking about the global equitable programs. So if you're a member of the Research for Life countries, I've already put the link I've already put a link in the chat. You are eligible to some of these global equitable models where you have waivers and support systems for early career researchers. And it depends on what country. In some countries, it is 100% waivers. In some other countries, it's a minimal charge. But what we are trying to say is that the fee, what you're trying to say is that there are ways in which to have your work published in PLOS and with your work, with the fees waived, so that you're not worried about the costs on APCs. Remember, the APCs are there to support the publishing process. Okay, and that is why it is normally encouraged for research institutions or academic institutions or funders to pay for it. But with that put in place, some institutions are not able to afford it, and researchers are not also able to afford it. And that is why PLOS has gone one step ahead to make sure that you have access to these journals through their equitable programs, global equitable programs. And this is why we felt this was so important for you to know about them, because my biggest concern, even as TCC Africa and IDA Africa, whenever everybody is talking about open access, it doesn't necessarily mean accessibility. So this workshop really is about accessibility. Know what is available for you as researchers when it comes to open access. So we shouldn't be having the narrative of the APCs are prohibitive. The narrative should be what equitable programs do you have for researchers from the Global South? Am I eligible? So that you can have a stepping stone in publishing in good quality journals. And as you can see, some of the journals are edited by Kenyan editors, or rather by African editors. So we are really trying to be as inclusive as possible. But also most importantly, these are journals that are also accepting multidisciplinary approaches to research. So take advantage of that. Don't say I'm in social sciences and I won't be able to publish in any of the PLOS platforms. They are taking in multidisciplinary approaches to research, and they are more than ready to support researchers in the Global South, especially when it comes to waivers and any equitable options to make it easy for you to publish in their journals. So there's there's a question from Godfrey Nato. And there are three questions. Number one, do you agree with me that PLOS and other publishers still control largely who publish in their key journals? For example, for instance, PLOS, I know there's PLOS Med, PLOS Patho, PLOS Genetics are designed to fence research work from the Global South. I don't know, Godfrey, I don't know what time you got in when Georgie was talking, because there is the journals that are under the Global Equitable Program are pretty much targeted for research in the Global South. Yeah, and there are about five titles, Georgie?
Yeah, I saw this question and I thought, oh, asking me the hard questions.
Yeah, there are about 5 titles that are targeting the Global South, and it pretty much answers this question that you're saying that you're yes, Georgie?
I would add as well, I don't disagree with you, Godfrey, for what it's worth. I think what we've been really trying to do here is ensure that there is space in our editorial boards, and that we're making sure that our editorial boards are representing researchers globally. we all have sort of 1 or 2 editors-in-chief, and we're trying to make sure that the group of editors-in-chief is as representative as we can, but we're trying to make sure there's space at the table. So they're not designed to fence off research from the Global South by any means, and we're doing as much as we can at the moment to really increase the number of people who are taking part. And so as an early career researcher as well, I would encourage you to get involved where you can, reviewing, to look for opportunities to step onto the editorial boards as well, because we need people to come with us and get involved.
And another way to know that their PLOS is working closely is trying to access researchers is the fact that they are working closely with the Research for Life programs, so that the Research for Life program is the largest program in the world that supports researchers in provision of journals and literature resources to researchers in the Global South. And through the Research for Life programs, what they're trying to do is to make sure that researchers from the Global South have equitable access to PLOS, either through their waivers, their schemes where they're offering waivers, so that you could publish in these journals. Remember, when you're looking at publishing in some of these journals, it's about the kind of research, the quality of the research you're producing. So you really need to meet the criteria that Ms. Georgie Field had mentioned earlier on what they are looking for, which in essence are global practicing standards in academic publishing today. I hope I've answered we have answered question number 1, Georgie. Now, Godfrey, sorry. Number 2, there's a second question from Godfrey is, do we have the same expectations of review as at the editor's office, or papers from Global South as are supposed to be extremely good before being passed to reviewers? So it's a question on review. Could you please answer that?
Yeah, of course. We do. We have exactly the same expectations for review as a researcher from the Global South as we have for any other researcher. My own personal opinion, and we've seen other publishers come forwards and say, we're going to publish papers from the Global South without peer reviewing. I think that does nothing for your reputation as a scientist, and you should be held to the same expectations as everybody else. So that's how we run our editorial office.
And also another thing, Godfrey, you also need to note that the bulk of their new titles now have researchers from the Global South. So it will also have a voice, it will have a representation and a voice from researchers in the Global South, so that we can have equitable peer review or influence peer review. You see, that's the other thing. There are 2 ways to look at it. There's equitable peer review or influence existing peer review systems so that it can accommodate researchers from the Global South. There was question number 3 from Godfrey. How can we get rid of these inequalities? I hope we have answered them. So unless there's anything else that you'd want to add, Georgie?
No, I think you said everything, Joy. It's about getting people to the table.
Okay, I'm seeing more questions coming in. So remember, colleagues, oh, good, I'm glad. There's a question from Miss Aurelia Munene. Okay, so she said, kindly repeat what is the starting point for a researcher who is ready to publish their work with PLOS. So what is expected of them? Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So if you go on to PLOS.org, we have a list of all of our journals, and you can click through them all and see the sort of scope for each of the journals, and you can see which one is most appropriate to the research that you're completing. We have expectations in terms of you having an ORCID ID for your corresponding author. So if they don't, then they need to make sure they've set one up. And as I said, it's very simple through the ORCID website. You just apply for one and they give you one. You will need to provide the data underlying your study. And you can either do that through, submitting it as Excel files as supporting information, or you can upload it to a repository and provide us with a link to the data, but you will need to do that or have a valid exemption. So when you're thinking about putting together your study, you need to think about how am I going to present my data when I submit this paper. And from there, again, be prepared if you want to apply for a waiver, be prepared to answer the questions in the form to do that at submission. So I think those are the really key things. Make sure you've got an ORCID ID, make sure you've got your data in a state where you can share it, and then make sure that you've got your valid information to put in if you're applying for a waiver program.
Okay. Any other questions or clarifications that you may need? Any questions? Okay. All right. So I hope this session has been helpful. As a research mentorship program, TCC Africa and IDA Africa will be closely reaching out to partners who can help you have a better understanding on open access and what opportunities exist. Here is our reality. Open access is here to stay. The question is how best to work with it. Okay? It's how best to work with it and understand how it works. And before I wind up, there's a question from Benjamin. Does PLOS One have any program targeted at postgraduate students? Because there's this notion that PLOS One only takes in fully fledged researchers, not students or early career researchers.
We don't have a targeted program. If you have generated research on a paper that is methodologically rigorous, you can submit it to PLOS One. There's absolutely no restriction there. If you were looking to join the editorial board, there are some requirements in terms of your publication history. So you'd want to make sure that you've been publishing reasonably often and have at least a sort of profile that people can look and see what you've been publishing in.
Okay. Thank you. So I think also as we wind as the next step is if you could share with us some information that we can share with our community on those who would be interested in joining the editorial board, or even as associate editors, or even as peer reviewers, so that they can be part of the process with PLOS. So if there is anything that is required, just let us know, then we can be able to share with them as well. So as I'd said, thank you so much, Georgie. And as I'd said earlier on, open access is here to stay. And another thing you need to be very cognizant of open access is that it costs money. All right, let's not romanticize that it doesn't cost money. It does cost money. So your narrative, the fact that it costs money, your narrative should be what waivers are there for we researchers in the global south. Okay. And the reason why it costs money is because we are trying to make research as accessible as possible, and it cannot be fully funded by the government. Okay, so these are some painful realities we have to deal with so that we can have access to our research. But then, what does this mean for you? You need to know what opportunities are there for researchers, especially early career researchers in the global south, when it comes to open access, and there are many. And the one thing that we've shared with you is if you belong to a Research for Life country, which we've shared the link with you, you are eligible for some of the global equity programs that PLOS has. So whether it is 100% waivers, 50%, 80%, so you do have these options. Or even whether you're a researcher, you can also reach out to PLOS and see how what kind of waivers are available and accessible for you. If you're in the biomedical research field and the medical sciences, they accept directly from medRxiv and bioRxiv. So they accept preprints. All these things we've been telling you about, using preprints so that you can have a smart journal selection strategy, that is very clear. They accept that. They are yet to work with Africa Archive, but they are still willing to accept any preprints coming from Africa Archive as long as you share a DOI. So still put in your manuscripts in Africa Archive, especially if it is not medical related, because Africa Archive takes in a multidisciplinary approach to research areas, which at the same time you see PLOS also accepts multidisciplinary work. So you can put your work in Africa Archive and you send the DOI to them and tell them that this is a preprint and it's already in a preprint repository. So basically they accept preprints. What does this mean for you? You have a smart journal selection strategy. Okay, you have an opportunity to have your work visible and accessible. So remember, open access doesn't necessarily mean accessibility. This is why we are taking you through all these workshops so that you can have access to this, to the various providers and supporters of open access, so that you know how it works and you can make best use of it. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for making it for our workshop today. Thank you so much, Georgie, for making it to this workshop and giving us an insight on thank you for giving an insight on how PLOS works and what kind of open access support systems they have available for researchers in the Global South. And IDA Africa, the team from IDA Africa led by Aurelia Munene, thank you so much for also bringing in your team and your members to benefit from this for this workshop. With that, ladies and gentlemen, bye and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.